I'm going to give you 3 reasons why you may want to ditch the standard over-the-counter anti-inflammatory drugs that you're taking and replace them with 2 natural components that I'm going to talk about later in the video. But before I go into detail, I want to explain what happens inside your body when you take an NSAID or a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. So we have to look, what is an NSAID? Okay, we're usually talking about things like aspirin, Ibuprofen, naproxen, or maybe some of the prescription ones like Fulvic. Okay, pretty powerful things. And how they react within your body is based on how they act on specific enzymes. You see, you have these enzymes that are called cyclooxygenase enzymes. You have COX enzyme 1 and COX enzyme 2. And they have 2 different functions in the body, but non-steroidal anti-inflammatories affect different ones. To determine which ones anti-inflammatory drugs affect, you have to look at the fact that there's 3 different kinds of anti-inflammatories. There's non-selective, there's partially selective, and there are selective anti-inflammatories. Non-selective anti-inflammatories basically just affect the entire body. They reduce inflammation throughout the entire body. Selective anti-inflammatories affect just one specific area, usually prescription anti-inflammatories. Partially selective, they do their darndest to make sure that they select one area of the body, but generally speaking, they still affect the entire continuum as well. So what are the differences in terms of how they affect the body with those cyclooxygenase enzymes, and how are they potentially bad for you? Well, now let me roll into the 3 reasons you want to avoid anti-inflammatory over-the-counter NSAIDs. The first one is one that you've heard about before, and that is gastrointestinal bleeding and serious abdominal pain. Okay, so you remember when I started talking about the COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes. Okay, so when you take some kind of anti-inflammatory, of course, you're trying to affect the COX-2. Why? Because the COX-2 regulates pain in the muscle and in the joint. You want that. You're taking an anti-inflammatory to try to reduce some generally muscular pain. But the issue is the COX-1 enzyme regulates the stomach lining. So when you break down the COX-1 enzyme as well, you break down the stomach lining, which means that you are very susceptible to serious abdominal pain and stomach bleeding. This is where it becomes a very serious issue, especially as you get older and your stomach gets a little bit weaker. Now, one way around this is to work with a non-selective non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, which means it's only going to affect the COX-2, but those NSAIDs have their own series of effects, and the main one being a serious heart risk, which leads to my number 2 reason. So if you have a left ventricle impairment, which if you don't have one, it probably sounds like Greek, but if you do have one, you know it. Or if you have any kind of general cardiac issue, anti-inflammatories can be increasingly dangerous. And there's not a lot of research addressing why, simply because it's relatively a new thing. But honestly, it's enough of a risk for me to not want to take. And the way it's seeming to come down to is renal issues. And what that means is your kidneys. You see, when you take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, it causes a small form of renal impairment, basically in the root of prostaglandin synthesis. Sounds like Greek, but essentially what that means is the fact that your kidneys are going to have a little bit of excess water and a little bit of excess sodium. This is going to cause a cardiac disruption, especially if you're sensitive. It's going to throw things out of whack. There was even a study by the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics that took a look at this and found that this is more than likely the most probable reason as to why those that have heart conditions should possibly stay away from anti-inflammatories. Now again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not saying if you have a heart condition, don't take them. I'm just parlaying the research over to you. Now, the third reason is flat out confusion. When you take an anti-inflammatory, there are a lot of contraindications and there are a lot of complications if you're taking other drugs. For instance, if you're taking a corticosteroid for anything, it can dramatically heighten the risk of stomach bleeding and ulcers. And additionally, there's a lot of simple over-the-counter medications that could be complicating non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and there's also simple everyday foods that can be affecting non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. So in light of all the confusion, where do you find some solace? Where do you go? You don't want to be taking over-the-counter meds, you don't want to be taking prescription meds, but you've got that little ache and pain, and you want to make sure that you're addressing it. Well, here's 2 simple ways that you can address that. Number 1 is turmeric. We hear about it everywhere, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper. You see, turmeric addresses inflammation. It's not just good for you, it's not just good for digestion, it's not just good for your overall health. It has been shown to really have a big effect on inflammation. In fact, there's a recent study, and it was one of the main reasons I wanted to do this video. You You see, what this study did is it looked at 109 participants. The study was done by the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine. So these 109 participants, they took half of them and they gave them 800 milligrams of ibuprofen. The other half, they gave 2,000 milligrams of turmeric. And what they did is they simply monitored them over a length of time. And after 6 to 8 weeks, there was a dramatic difference between those that took turmeric over those that took ibuprofen. So simply taking an herb made a big difference in perceived joint pain and muscle pain over those that were actually taking a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory that was affecting their cyclooxygenase enzymes. Pretty serious stuff right there. So what's the other one? The other one is cannabidiol oil, CBD oil, derived from the cannabis plant. However, it does not have any psychoactive component. It's flat out just the medicinal component that works on molecular pathways and more than likely inhibits enzymes. Simply because of legality issues, there's not a lot of research surrounding CBD oil. We haven't been able to do the research that we really would like to do, but CBD is dramatically showing to help inflammation and dramatically showing to help reduce pain associated with inflammatory issues. So right then and there, you have two quick ways that you can possibly substitute your non-steroidal anti-inflammatories without dealing with the issues. And some of you might know that I sit on the Clinical and Nutritional Advisory Board for a company called PuraTHRIVE. One of the reasons why I've invested so much time and energy into learning about turmeric is simply because I want to make sure that they are in the forefront of research and continue to be there. So when it comes to absorbing your turmeric and actually getting the most anti-inflammatory effect out of it, you want to make sure that you're looking for one that uses a liposomal delivery method so that you're actually utilizing it and you have a sustained release throughout the day. As always, keep it locked in here on these videos and keep it locked in here with PuraTHRIVE. I'll see you in the next video.